On this Goblin Grenade Podcast, we are talking about the changes that they have made to the Diablo 4 Season 11, and then in the second part, we're going to talk about Path of Exile 2 0.4 patch update, where the Druid may or may not be making an appearance. We are all pretty sure the Druid is making an appearance. But first, we're going to talk about Diablo 4. Now, Season 11 has not, it's not out yet. First off, they pushed it back. Usually, it should have dropped on December 9th, and usually what happens is, in the seasons, you can check the season pass that you can get, and it'll tell you when the season ends. And usually when the day the season ends, that day the next season starts. Has been that way for the past couple of seasons. This time, however, they delayed it for 2 days. So the season ends on the 9th, and everybody at first thought the 9th would be when the new Season 11 launches. That's not the case. They're waiting for the Game Awards now, and they said stay tuned for the Game Awards for something else. So not only are they waiting for the Game Awards to drop, but they're launching the season on December 11th, which I think is a Thursday. Yeah, it's a Thursday. They usually do this on Tuesdays in the morning because it's a more convenient time for not just the player base around the world, technically speaking, but also for the employees at Blizzard so they can maintain the early crush of server issues and issues that will pop up every season in the first day or two. But now they're waiting till 11:30, I think, Eastern Standard Time to launch this season. And this isn't like a midnight launch type of thing. They're specifically waiting for something to happen at the Game Awards. They are announcing something at the Game Awards. I do not think it's going to be the next expansion shadow dropping. If they do that, that will be the dumbest thing they could do. Because it would be on brand, though, unfortunately. But the reason why you wouldn't want to do that is because people like me, we haven't allocated the cash to afford the new expansion. Okay, so you're going to alienate a lot of people except for the super early adopters, which I would be one, but needless to say, I wouldn't be able to get it until next year. And you also it would just be a bad idea. So I think there's going to be more information about this season dropping and more content to this season or being added to the game itself than they're leading on. Then they decided to kind of redo certain parts, if you will, because that's how many changes happened from the PTR till now on Season 11. When it comes to sanctification, which is, the greater affixing type of thing, the new thing for that, upgrading an affix to a greater affix can now also occur on non-ancestral items. Affixes on ancestral unique or mythic unique items can no longer be replaced. Indestructible affix replaced by adding 5 to 25 quality ranks. So they're getting rid of your item is indestructible, which in the world of Diablo 4 is meaningless. Like, that is basically, you might as well have just put a blank, nothing happened here. But now you get 5 to 25 quality ranks, which we'll get into in a little bit because I think they just raised the quality ranks up as well. To sanctify an item, it only needs to have an item power of 750 or higher in torment difficulties rather than being an ancestral item. So it's making it a little bit easier for you to actually sanctify your items. Affix ranges have been adjusted across the board. In general, affix values have been increased and ranges have been narrowed, and some affixes now have a higher maximum. Basically meaning you're not going to get worthless stat lines. Your barbarian's not going to get like extra magic, for lack of a better term, for lack of a better example, if you will. And additional legendary powers have been added. Divine Gifts, Andariel reduced item quality rewards in pre-torment difficulties. Apparently in pre-torment difficulties, Andariel was dropping a lot of things that they shouldn't have been doing. Duriel gets bonus experience from the maggots in Helltide have been adjusted. So apparently also XP was a little wonky on the with the Duriel maggot ads, if you will. Glyph upgrades. Glyph upgrades now get a scaling chance to grant an extra upgrade attempt based on divine rank. Rank 1 grants a 25% chance up to a 100% upgrade chance at rank 5. Purified gifts now grant 2 levels instead of 1. Okay. Maybe a little easier glyph grind, because that grind to 100 I'm never doing. I'm not grinding 5 glyphs to a level 100. I'm that weird in between hardcore and casual type of player. Like, I'm a casual try hard Diablo player. Okay, I'm like right on that cusp. Even if I just focused a little bit more time on it, I would be a thirsty, sweaty Diablo 4 grinder. I'm not like that anymore. I'm not built like that anymore. This is not Diablo 2 day 1 here, folks. 25 years ago. 20-something-year-old Dom? Yeah, Dom Douglas, 25-something-year-old Dom Douglas was definitely a grinder in that aspect, okay? I'm replaying Final Fantasy X and X-2, and knowing that I fully did that license board for everybody in that game when it dropped the first time on the PlayStation 2. Now I'm just like, all right, I'm grinding just enough just to be able to beat this next boss. Or get the next ability. I'm not spending 10 hours grinding one spot like the Thunder Plains or the Calm Lands. I'm not doing that again. I'll grind for a few hours, put a podcast on, chill out, get everything, until I'm like, you know what, I'm bored of this. Whereas before, when I'm like, you know what, I'm bored of this, but I still need to get that one extra ability. No longer. So now, going back to Diablo 4's changes in Season 11. Lesser Evil Invasion. Andariel no longer regenerates health if you die. Cool. Andariel phase transition is now much quicker. Also, cool, especially if you're grinding Andariel. The size of Belial's eyeballs have been increased to make them easier to target, which is also a benefit. Apparently in the PTR they were so small people didn't even notice them. Belial's death now takes less time to finish. Okay, I don't need an amazing death animation for a boss that I'm just going to repeat 2 seconds later. Let's get to the grinding here. Shrines no longer disappear when fighting Azmodan. Apparently that may have been a problem. Azmodan has been granted resilience to bring him more in line with other world bosses. So once again, they overtuned Azmodan. Like, we didn't see that coming. Lesser evils in the overworld now grant unique items from lair boss reward pools. Okay, so a little bit more gears dropping in a little bit more appropriate ways. Now, the balance updates, they've balanced mythic uniques, the Avarion Spear of Lysander, the lucky hit gain resource reduced from 66% to 22%, and the Melted Heart of Sea League, primary resource generation reduced to 50%, and the previous in the PTR, each point in your primary stat increased your primary resource by 3%, but you have 75% reduced to life. Any damage you would have taken is dealt to your primary resource before your life. If you have not taken damage in 6 seconds, your resource regenerates to full over 3 seconds. Now, on this version, damage is dealt to your primary resource before life, and damage taken this way is drastically reduced. Your primary resource is doubled, but maximum life is reduced to 75%. Kind of like a weird version of a mana shield. And they left a note here. The developers note, to reduce the number of required caps in the game, we adjusted this effect. This now grants less primary resource, but should provide roughly as much durability as before. Apparently, it was the truest definition of sugar glass cannon. Not even a glass cannon, because that actually has a little bit of resiliency. Sugar glass breaks if you look at it wrong. They made some tweaks to Barbarian. Damage per 10 points of strength increased from 1% to 1.1. Skills got adjusted. New items have been getting adjusted. Aspect of anger management. Previously, while above 55 to 40 fury, you are berserk, which means you do more damage, but 2 fury drains every second. Now, while above 50 fury, deal 10 to 30% increased damage and gain berserking, but 3 fury drains every second. They changed a whole bunch of things on the Paragon nodes, tempering, Berserk Finesse. I'm only covering most of the Barbarian because that's what I usually play. Affixes remove damage while Warcry is active. Okay. That's a real big whirlwind ability. That's a real big thing. Aerial finesse is arsenal finesse is no longer available. Weapon tune affix is removed. Resource generation with two-handed bludgeoning weapons. Resource generation with dual wielded weapons, and resource regen with two-handed slashing weapons. So what you're telling me is, if I'm looking at this on a cursory standpoint, as we know it, are whirlwind barbs dead? Because damage while Warcry is active is pretty big for whirlwind barbs. Not even gonna lie. They fix some things on druids, necros, rogues. On the rogues, on the sorcerer, they put a development note to start things off. We heard the feedback from the PTR loud and clear and decided to revisit the suite of teleport changes for the start of the season. We decided to keep the overall changes to teleport enchantment, but we wanted to give it more of a cooldown reduction power loss there and put it back into itemization. You should have a clearer choice to invest using item slots or tempering to get a full reset cooldown teleport, while also maintaining a middle ground level of investment that gives you a low cooldown option. And to that effect, the teleport enchantment, adjusted the description to specify that it invokes teleport and doesn't cast it. To shimmering teleport, previously on the PTR, teleport dazes enemies at its endpoint for 1.5 seconds. Now you gain 25% all resistance for 3 seconds after teleporting. So there's that. They changed a couple things on that, a couple things on Spiritborn. Masterworking, maximum quality is now 25 from 20. Quality increase per masterwork is now 2 to 5, up from 1 to 3. Quality upgrades now increase all affix values by 1% per quality value. Fully masterworking an item now gives a 50% upgrade to a random affix, which can be a tempered affix. The boosted affix will be colored differently to highlight it. Masterworking cost has been adjusted and scales exponentially with item quality. Examples: item quality 0, 10 Obusite. Item quality 5, 25. Item quality 15, 66. And then item quality 25, 100 Obusite. Tempering. There is now a chance for tempered affix gets applied as a greater affix. Resource gain tempering affixes have been added for helms and rings. Okay. Resource per second tempering affix added to pants. Adjusted tempering recipe to remove affixes from class-specific manuals that were extraneous due to existing and generic manuals or unused. Some class-wide effects have been adjusted. Natural motion, movement speed changed from 16 to 25% to 15 to 25%. And movement speed after killing an elite increased from 20 to 22.5% to 25 to 45%. Worldly endurance, maximum life increase from 84 to 141, all the way now to 349 to 450. Natural schemes, thorns increase from 45 to 75 to 211 to 281. Can we please stop making thorns a thing? Thorns is not a thing. Worldly stability, affix is added. Casting ultimate skills restores primary resource. And now the big change with toughness, okay? Everyone's been like, what does toughness mean? Is this like when they overpowered shields and made it impossible to kill things in the early game? Or in late game even? Toughness. When comparing items, the armor of resistance difference between items will now display as a percentage of toughness difference instead of just displaying the flat armor difference. Toughness is now displayed in the character stats window. The toughness tooltip now breaks down damage resistance per damage type. Torment difficulties now display a recommended toughness amount when selecting difficulty. Okay, so toughness is their new thing because they can't make up their minds on shields and overpowers and whatnot. Now, the miscellaneous. Fortify and barrier generation are now part of the general defensive pool of affixes that can appear on items. Monsters in the open world no longer scale 1-to-1 with your level. It is now offset so the player scales better than monsters. Monster damage has been reduced at low levels. monster power has been tuned down slightly in early torment tiers. Base health for boss monsters have been increased. The chance for items with multiple gear affixes to drop has been increased in torment tiers. More items now drop from levels 1 to 15. When in a capstone dungeon, the closest affiliated difficulty is now displayed. Cooldown reduction can now naturally appear on rings, gloves, and shields. Various tuning to capstone dungeon encounters. Various monsters and monster pack spawning adjustments, and various other minor updates and tweaks to sanctification and seasonal activities. They fixed a bunch of bugs, skills, and equipment for everybody. And it's a massive rework. Technically now you could say you're looking at season 11.1 or 11.2 with everything that they changed, which means they're listening that not many people were digging the season or digging what changes have been made, and they're trying to slowly get back to those changes, or slowly undo those changes, if you will. And I'm still going to play the season when it drops next Thursday for some reason. Game Awards better be some game-changing things happening to Diablo 4, if you know what I mean, because there's no reason for this. And if the game change is the expansion gets shadow dropped, which shouldn't happen, but doesn't surprise me that Blizzard would do this. Because remember, the expansion was supposed to come out this year, but they had to fix so many things wrong with the game in the late spring to early summer that they had to focus all their energy on making sure the player base still stuck around for bad decisions they made and continued to make. Now, everyone says Season 10 is the best season by far because everything was viable, because they maxed out the power, okay? Everybody had power level over 9,000, if you get the old meme, because I'm old, because I haven't shaved, and you can clearly see that I'm wearing a beanie, not because it's cold, that too, but because I haven't shaved my head in weeks. So, that being said, I still think this is going to be a mid-tier season. I think I might play it for a few days, but once because Path of Exile is dropping, I think, on the 9th. The new season of Path of Exile. I think drops on the 9th. No, December 12th. Oh, boy. No, I don't know if that's it. Yeah, December 12th. So a day after Blizzard pushed back, Blizzard, I think, is going to find out a very bad lesson now. Because I'll be honest, Path of Exile 2 smokes Diablo 4 on a lot of things. And this coming from a guy who's played a lot of Path of Exile 2 and has yet to complete the end game. Freely admit that. I don't like the maps. I get into it a little bit, and then by the time I hit like level 89 to like 92, I'm done. I'm checked out. I'm like, all right, I've done everything I want to do. I'm not doing these super uber fights. And that's, once again, how I'm that weird border of casual to hardcore grinder. Like, I'm right on that cusp. I get to the point where I'm like, okay, the end is really far away, but I've done all this work already. I don't want to do that work again. I don't want to do all that work. So I think what's going to happen is I'm going to play POE 2, the new season, because I also think it's a free weekend as well. Let me see. Real time. I'm going to see. I don't know. I thought it was going to be a free weekend. And in like 40 minutes, their live stream talking about the season is Grinding Gear Games live stream is going to start in about 40 minutes. 11 a.m. December 12th. Diablo 4 is not even getting 12 hours. I guarantee you. Okay, not next week because the seasons haven't dropped yet, but in 2 weeks now, podcast. 2 weeks podcast. I'm going to be talking about the massive player drop in Diablo 4, 10 hours, 12 hours or so after the new season drops because Path of Exile 2 just absolutely obliterated it. Yeah, and it's also free to play for those 3 days too on December 12th. Yeah, so not only is it a free to play weekend for Path of Exile 2, but it's dropping 12 hours after Diablo 4 Season 11 because they actually said, okay, well, they're going to drop on the 9th. We're going to drop on the 11th or 12th. Give them a couple days. And then Blizzard's like, nah, we're going to wait till the Game Awards drops. Yeah, I really think Blizzard is about to see a bad lesson, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Diablo 4 team is drastically changed after this future debacle that's going to happen. Trust me, I really think Season 11 now seeing how it's going to drop 12 hours before Path of Exile 2's next season, you're going to see something. And the Diablo 4 team is going to see something they didn't want to acknowledge up until this point. That Path of Exile 2 is better in every way. In every way. And I play both games. I've put hundreds of hours in both games, okay? And I like the fact that there usually was a couple days or a week in between gaps of the season so I can at least play some of the season in one game and then when the other season dropped, get into that. I might not even fire up Season 11, yo. Until I'm done playing POE 2. So yeah, bad times ahead for Blizzard, I think, and some of the decisions that have been made on this season and when they drop this season, I think is going to affect the Diablo 4 team. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me in the least if this failure of Season 11, now that I'm looking at things, you see a different design team for Diablo 4 moving forward. And I think that's probably better because this design teams in the game's existence just can't figure it out. And this design team has been around for a bit and they've barely put together good seasons. And the only reason why Season 10 is lauded as it is, and because every build is viable, is because they had to overpower everything to the point that everyone was like, bring these into the base game. Bring these weird, unique items into the base game. I'm telling you. This is what's going to happen. All right, well, that was part 1 where we're talking about Diablo 4, and I get to record this in a couple hours. The second part in a couple hours when Path of Exile 2 drops. That's why I didn't drop the podcast yesterday, because I'd be like, well, I'm going to be a week late. But you know what? We're doing it. Snap of my fingers is going to be the Path of Exile 2 0.4 thoughts and whatnot. To you, it's going to be a snap of my fingers. To me, it's going to be like hours. Diablo 4 Season 11 is yeah. You had a good run, Diablo 4. You had a good run. Not gonna lie. Just finished the reveal stream. They're doing the Q&A currently. Right now, it's 2:46, December 4th. And, oh boy, did Path of Exile 2 just drop a bomb. And already eviscerate Diablo 4 Season 11 before it even started. I'm going to have to take a few words out, and I'm going to definitely do it in the beginning, but Blizzard around and found out. And Path of Exile did not like that at all. Considering that we've just said moments ago that Diablo 4 Season 11 drops pretty much 12 hours now before Path of Exile 2 0.4 drops. I'm going to play a little bit of Diablo 4 when it drops. And then the second Path of Exile 2 drops. It's donezo for about 2 weeks. And then I'll come back to Diablo 4 because Diablo 4 Season 11 now, after watching this, is garbage. Garbage. I hate being negative like this. I really, really do, because I have hundreds of hours in Diablo 4. I have hundreds of hours in Path of Exile. I have hundreds of hours in Path of Exile 2. I play these games a lot. I even go back and play 3. Once a year, I'll wind up playing Diablo 2 Resurrected again, because I like the difficulty in it. I love that style of ARPG. But, man, the evisceration that Grinding Gear Games, for the rest of this part will be referred to as GGG, just did to the dev team at Diablo 4, man, masterclass should be researched in future game development classes on how to just simply destroy your opponent before it even begins. The development team of Diablo 4 should be ashamed of themselves. They should be embarrassed. And quite frankly, yeah, I'm all for that entire dev team getting changed out after this, because it's been the same garbage year, like season after season after season after season. There's been 2 seasons where I played 3 days just to max out as much as I could, and like of the season pass and season journey and whatnot, and then just pieced out immediately. I don't even think I'm going to do that because of what they've done with Path of Exile 2 0.4 reveal. Okay, first off, new class. We all knew it. Druid. You can either be a bear, a wolf, or a wyvern. Okay? You can be a human. In your human form, you have spells. And in animal form, you have melee and attacks and whatnot. It's the first hybrid spells and physical attack class that GGG has done, and they have said it's been the hardest class for them to develop to balance out not only the physical but also the magic as well, because you equip something called animal talismans, and when you do that, you get to choose one of the 3 animals that you could be, and this allows you to transform into said animal. And the bear they've revealed first is a devastating melee machine. It looks super fun. It is slow to hit, but hits like an 18-wheel truck going in your face. Or it hits hard. Then they revealed the wolf. Then they revealed the wolf, which is quick and speedy attacks, but you can mark an enemy and then defeat them, and then another wolf spawns from that marked defeated enemy. So you can have like your own wolf pack. And too sweet. And basically it's a weird version of a hybrid necromancer, and the dev team at Diablo 4 is probably crying right now because we all know GGG is going to do a necromancer class better than the necromancer in Diablo 4, even though it's not a necromancer. But if I play druid, I'm rocking wolves. Then they showed the last one, which I thought at first was a dragon, but it's a wyvern, which makes more sense. And it uses its wing slash attacks to back enemies away from them, and then you can attack with AoE, area of effect attacks, with like charged lightning and fire and whatnot. And then you, I guess, eat enemies to regain life in wyvern form. What the is going on besides the story involving the druid, who apparently lost his mind and has been in animal form for years, and then recently just like came back as a human? Is like, oh, I have a wife, I gotta find her. So yeah, overall, between all the forms, it looks like to be a nice flow in combat between animal and human form. Skills in human form can also be used to heighten damage in animal form. It looks like they took a lot of time and care into this druid class, which is not only out druiding the Diablo 4 druid class, but also kind of out necromancering the necromancer class as well in Diablo 4, to be perfectly honest with you. I burninate the countryside. I heard it. Burninate the peasants. Yep, I heard burninate the countryside. Trogdor, because everybody's going to be naming their druid Trogdor or some version of Trogdor. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. My age is showing. Then 30 new support gems for druid. But they also managed to make these support gems play nice with other existing classes and builds. They showed off some of the crazy things that you can do with already classes that exist in the game and builds that exist in the game with some of the druid gems. And man, we're getting some buffs for some classes here, folks. Runes now have new mods for which only druids have access to, because this also plays nice with one of the druid ascendancy classes. I forgot the name of it, barely paid attention to it because I was just like so enamored with like, oh wow, they're actually making modifiers on runes specifically for druids. And then the Oracle Ascension can unlock 130 new skills in the skill tree, but only for them if you take a specific node in that ascendancy class for Oracle. War's over. Diablo 4 is dead. I hate being negative like this because I'm still going to be playing Diablo, but for the love of all that is good, I want to put the meme of stop, he's already dead, and yet this still goes on. Because, okay, there's the new class right there. We could have called it a day, folks. No, we got the new league as well dropping. The Last of the Druids is not the only thing we dropping in 0.4. Fate of the Vow, which people thought it might have been going back to the delve mechanic. Instead, we're going back to the temple runs, which I liked when they were first started out, and then they just unfortunately got outclassed by delve and other mechanics in Path of Exile 1. So basically, you find pieces to modify the temple, and later explore the temple to find out what happened to the vow, along with getting sweet loot. You basically go back in the past, like you do in Path of Exile 1, when you got enough pieces together, and run the temple. And you have to, in Path of Exile 1, you have to unlock other rooms to get to the final room to defeat the final boss of the temple to get better rewards. And you had X amount of runs to unlock everything in the temple until you did the run. This one's a little different. Now I guess you unlock runs in the main game, and then when you run into the temple, you can store up a bunch of runs, because when you activate the command center, you start putting pieces of your own version of the temple together, and you can unlock other things on your way to get to the final boss fight. And you can make things harder or easier to your liking, or enhance bosses by putting them in the room, but making sure you put them next to like a rare mob room. So now that commander has a troop to command to make it more harder, but also to drop sweeter rewards. And after every run, maybe I think they said 2 or 3 of the rooms disappeared, leaving the other 3 in existence. But then you can run the room again, adding 6 rooms to the build. So eventually you're building your way to the end maze of this room to fight basically a Treasy. Right before, we'll get to that in a little bit, right before they summon the beast and commune with the beast and meld with the beast to cause the apocalypse that happened in the past times of Path of Exile storyline. But you can now have more corruption chances, and you can change corrupted items via these temples and spending time in them. The Vow crafting machine looks interesting. You can also now replace your limbs for extra bonuses. So if you want to move faster, you can replace a leg. If you want more defense, you can replace an arm, up until you're defeated in combat and have to respawn, which at that point your body turns back to normal, and then you have to, sacrifice a foot or an arm again to get ability again, because they spawn at random too. Like they come up at generate randomly, as well as the words I was trying to find. I'm sorry, this is probably the best day for me, and I'm so glad I postponed this podcast till today, because wow, did GGG just show Blizzard how it's done. You can store energy as well to do multiple runs without slowing your mapping down as well, which mapping is considered the end game content. So you can store up like 10 runs if you want, and then just for the next couple hours, just do nothing but temple runs and make sure that you're unlocking everything that you can on the temple. New Uber boss is a Treasy. As I said, happens right before they meld with the beast in the past, causing the apocalypse to happen. Way before, timeline-wise, way before in Path of Exile 1, it was always alluded to that the Val kind of... There was a apocalypse that happened that the Val may or may not have been caused of because they flew too close to the sun, if you will. And in Path of Exile 2, you kind of figure out what they did to cause that to happen. A Treasy melded with the beast that you're fighting in the game, and you go back in the past to try to stop it but fail. And yeah, so you're trying to stop a Treasy from causing the apocalypse to happen. The rise of the... So that's amazing because Path of Exile 2 does have a continuing story that goes in from Path of Exile 1 as well. Woo, sorry, that's... Man alive. Rise of the Abyssal, which was the Abyss League, is now in the core game, but only in the end game and mapping. And it has its own Atlas tree as well. So if you want to abuse the Abyss mechanics, which are fun to do, because if you have an item with an open prefix or suffix, as long as it has 5 total prefixes and suffixes, that's a really hard word to say, in them, you can craft another random one, and you get to choose between 3 that you think are the best, or if you have the ability to do it, you can re-roll them. You can kind of craft whatever you want, or if you have an item with nothing in it and you can keep crafting the perfect item for you. That's going to be in the core game now. Tablets can now be crafted to a rare with 4 mods on them. Tablets are your maps. Tablets are the ones that affect the other maps, and you usually get 10 maps that get affected by these tablets. And I think it was either like Magic was the highest that they can go until you get to like Legendary. There was no rare mod. Now you can mod them because they're slowly making changes to the mapping system. Maps no longer scale the number of monsters in the map. This season in 0.3, they reduced the number of monsters for the first few tiers of maps, and then it went right back to normal, increasing the number of mobs in the maps all the way up to the height of tier 15. They're not doing that anymore. There's no more extra monsters in maps. Instead, they're going to have 40% more life, but also give 40% more rewards as well. And they're reducing speed mods that the monsters can receive, I think, to compensate for this, because there's speedy mobs are a problem for almost every build. They also said that 0.4 had more planned for maps, also known as the endgame, but they overhauled so much and made sure the Druid was as awesome as it is that they guaranteed 0.5 will include major changes. And my prediction for that is finally we get the complete overhaul of maps in general. They've been saying for about 8 months now, if not a year, that they've been wanting to change the end game of it. They realize that the end game of Path of Exile 2 isn't exactly as good as it can be. They've been wanting to experiment and change it, and they're slowly doing it, but stuff like, I don't know, making the Druid class being a badass helps a lot. So yeah, they said 0.5, which is going to come out in April, I think, of next year, late March, early April, because they're on 4-month cycles here with the seasons. That'll be a major map overhaul. They're reducing special effects in-game to help with performance all across the board from PC and console players. They're trying to make sure that they're not overloading systems with so many graphical effects that you have a massive frame rate drop happen. They're also taking the delirium fog, they're toning it down drastically. We're not going grayscale anymore on the visuals. We're just going to go a light little darkening, if that, or adding just the slightest amount of gray to like a little bit of gray, not like sliding the gray bar all the way to the right. They're also adding 11 new unique items to the game, rebalancing plenty of uniques that haven't been getting used, because it's big. The other big problem with Path of Exile 2, which we all admit, there's only a handful of unique items in the game that are worth a damn, and everything else is just kind of trade bait, like niche items that almost nobody uses, or you just, like me, I'm trying my damnedest to get a full collection of uniques, because most of them are not being used. They're rebalancing plenty of the old uniques in an attempt to get people to use them again. Balance changes to every ascendancy class, rebalanced 90 skills and 250 new passive skills to the passive tree. Now I think 130 of them are for the druid on that ascendancy class, but this is me barely touching anything, not super deep diving in anything, because the patch notes are coming out in 2 hours and I'm not waiting that long, because at this point we could just stick a knife in Diablo 4. It's dead unless something drastically happens. I hate talking negative like this because I've put hundreds of hours in the game, but at this point in my life, I'm at I want to enjoy it, and when I stop enjoying it as much, I should just stop playing it. Like, I just recently did that with Black Ops 7. I was enjoying it until I wasn't, and instead of hanging on desperately and playing the game, a game I didn't like, I just said, yeah, let it go. Did that also with Borderlands 4. Completed the campaign, tried to 100% the game, and then just got sick of it 10 minutes after beating it or something like that. Haven't turned it on since. Still the worst $140 I ever spent. Not Diablo 4 bad, because Diablo 4 is actually playable and enjoyable in certain aspects of it. Yes, Borderlands 4 is way below Diablo 4, and I said Borderlands is the most disappointing thing I've played in a long time. But Path of Exile 2 is here to cuddle me. Hold me closer, Tony Danza. And basically just saying, we got you, boo. My name is Dom Douglas for Max Heroes and Villains, and if you enjoyed this absolutely strange podcast where I reviewed Diablo 4 Season 11 and then waited for Path of Exile 0.4 reveal trail to happen and then talked about that, you could tell there's two differences here. For Max Heroes and Villains, may your top deck always be mythic. I didn't even get to talk about Wizards of the Coast announcing Monster Hunter Secret Lair to undo it a day later because it was that bad. That's the only bit of news that happened in Wizards of the Coast. There we go. Bye.